It takes a little bit of a few seconds to catch up on all the live streaming events. So let me see if we are live on Twitch. Twitch often is the fastest. And as we can see now, yes, on Twitch we have a stream manager that actually works. And YouTube will follow slightly later, I guess. So let's just start with our live stream from Digital Classroom. And today it's all about street and travel photography. You guys have been asking for it a lot, so let's start. Okay, so now this year, of course, is a terrible year for traveling because, well, there is no travel whatsoever. And this means that we are actually a little bit looking for different ways of shooting, right? Let's take a look, for example, at my work. I normally teach workshops twice a week. We do model photography, we do celebrities, we do events. I do seminars for photo clubs. And this year we do absolutely nothing. So that's when you start to look at something different, right? And one of the things that a lot of people love to do, including me, of course, is actually shooting street and travel photography. Now, what is street and travel photography? In essence, it's everything that you photograph during a trip. So that can be in your local neighborhood, or it can even be, of course, on a little bit further trip. So one of the things is, how do you go from simple images to a little bit more extreme and a little bit more what you can publish online, and that will actually get you some likes. So let's take a look at that. Now, first of all, we have the chat open on our Twitch, so you can ask whatever you want. Let me first lower the volume a little bit. YouTube somehow is still catching up, so if it doesn't work on YouTube, we will upload this later, of course, on YouTube via Twitch. Okay, so let's go to our split screen and let's take a look at some of the images, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about those images and what we did. Now, one of the things that I always advise people to do is actually find local photographers or local people. If you can't find a local photographer, local people will do just fine. The reason for this is very simple. Those people know the area by heart. They know, very simple, where to go to for the great shots, right? So when we visited Norway, the first thing we did was actually put out a call on the internet and find some local photographers. And that ended up in something completely different than I expected. Because one of those guys actually asked me like, "Hey Frank, do you get seasick very fast?" And I went like, "Not really. Do you want to get on my boat?" "Yes, sure, we would love that." So we were able to take some really cool shots from the water, like for example this one. Now, that's not really that interesting, right? It's just something you take from the water and you go like, "Yeah, okay, that's nice." But what if that person also knows somebody with the Ghost card and they were just testing a new helicopter? Now, normally you have to be very lucky, of course, to witness something like that. But if you know the guy and that guy knows somebody, hey, then you get some really cool shots. For example, like this. Now, we were very close to the helicopter here. I actually took a 100 to 400 mm lens, and I actually hardly ever zoomed it out all the way. I actually, some images I thought like, okay, I would like to go a little bit further back than 100. So this is one of the things that is really getting you great shots for the very simple reason. One, it's a situation that you normally never experience, and two, it's a situation that literally gets you great shots. But there are some more things. Like for example, if you know somebody somewhere, they can also take you to places that normally people don't go. Now, one of the things when we visited, I believe it was Iceland. No, Finland. Anyway, where was that? Finland, I think, right? Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that I wanted to do was go somewhere where you see stuff that you normally don't see. So we asked the local photographer, hey, where can we go? And he actually took us to, and it was literally called that way, the gateway to hell. Now, this was a pretty long walk. And the nice thing about the walk was it was through a beautiful forest area. The only problem, there was snow everywhere. So this was a trip that you normally would never ever be able to do. For the very simple reason, if you step a little bit next to the path, you would probably break your legs because you would go 1 meter into the snow. And because he knew exactly where to walk, this was one of the most beautiful trips. Now, we took a lot of great shots during that walk, but one of the shots that actually really has a special meaning for me is actually this one. This is the photographer that took us there. And you see the big knife that he's holding where he's actually cutting the bread? When we started out, I saw the knife and I asked him like, hey, why do you have that big knife? And he said, that's for wolves. I was going like, excuse me? That's for wolves. Yeah, okay, wolves. Is there a danger? No, not at all. And this is where you start to realize that when you live in a country like the Netherlands, you are of course being brought up by, if you go into nature, just be back at 5, right? But if you walk into the nature, in an area like Finland or Iceland or Sweden or Norway, you can get lost. Maybe you have to spend the night because, well, you get lost. And there is of course always a chance of wolves. Now, is there a real chance of wolves? No, but there is. So this is one of the things that I so much love about talking with those local photographers, because they give you a totally different insight. And he actually used a knife to cut some bread and some salmon, fresh salmon. So it was a really, really weird experience at one point, but also gave me some beautiful insights about how somebody just lives in a country. And that's something that I really like. Another thing that works really, really well is actually Google Maps. Now you might wonder, Google Maps, Frank? Yeah, just zoom in. So what we do if we travel with the RV, we actually park somewhere the night before. I take Google Maps and I just zoom in and I see whatever is in that neighborhood, because Google Maps, although it doesn't show you like, hey Frank, there's a photography option there, it shows you zoomed in exactly where there can be interesting stuff that isn't on a map. And that's actually how we found this abandoned water park. This was, I believe, in Denmark. And if you drove past it, you would never ever have found it. But thanks to Google Maps, I was just zooming in and I was going like, hey, what is that? Oh, it looks like a water park. And I zoomed in more and was like, hey, it's totally abandoned. And then we started looking online, of course, because then you start looking online. And it was like, hey, there's an abandoned water park there and a lot of photographers go there for urbex photography. Hey, great location. We went there, took some amazing shots. And one fun detail, don't tell anybody else, this is between us. One fun detail was actually that during that day, there was a photo shoot going on with nude models. And the only thing that they were was absolutely nothing, but they were all plus-sized models. And it was so much fun because we were walking through this abandoned playground park with all these water slides and little attractions. It was totally quiet, like a Walking Dead scene. And it was huge. And at one point we just walked up to the water slides, and that's where this whole club of plus-sized models were dancing around naked and people taking photos, and we were just at one point just shocked, going like, okay. But just behave normally. And one of the photographers came up to me and said, hey, are you here for the photo shoot? And I was going like, yeah, but a different photo shoot. Oh, you can shoot our models. And we declined and we just walked up and took some other images. But this is one of the other tips that I want to give you guys. Now, sometimes you end up in a situation what you didn't plan, or you are in a location that is actually illegal. Just behave normally. Don't run away. Don't say anything rude. It's happened a few times with us during urbex exploring that we actually encountered the police. We never got into real trouble. The thing is, if the police comes up, I know I'm doing something wrong, I just tell them like, hey, we're just a photographer, I show them my images, and I just say like, hey, can you give us another half an hour and we will leave. We will leave everything nice and even, but we don't want any trouble. Overall, they will just say, okay, we will be back in an hour. If you're still here, you end up in jail. Yeah, sure. But anyway, we never had any real problems. Now, another thing about local photographers is, again, they know those little photos. Now, if you know Scott Kelby, you probably already saw this shot because he had the same tour guide that I had. And this one I really, really love. Now, I'm not a real architectural photographer, but I love shapes. And this one I would have never ever found. This was in Prague. And you had to go into a normal residential building. So it's not a building that you can normally walk in. It's actually a building, when you see it, you go like, why the hell should you go in there for this shot? And you only could take the shot in one position, under the stairs, aiming up. And only when you aimed it up, you saw the light bulb. So if you just was in there, if you just went in there like we did, I just went like, why does he take me in here? There's nothing interested. Then he walked towards the stairs and I was still thinking like, why am I here? And then he walked up to the stairs. He pointed his camera up. He took a picture. He said, Frank, stand there, take the picture. So I just walked up there. I was kind of like, oh, that's why. Those are literally the jewels in your portfolio that you will never ever find yourself. Or unless if you go online and you find those images and find the location, but that takes a lot of time. Another thing that can happen, of course, if you know people, is that sometimes you get the opportunity to shoot stuff that you would never ever shoot. Now, if you remember a few years ago, there was this huge hurricane in New York and New Jersey. I don't remember the name of the hurricane at the moment, but it was tremendous and it was really devastating. Now, Sandy. Now, when we visited New York, one of our friends actually had a friend that owned a house over there. Well, there wasn't much left of the house, but they had to pick up some stuff from the house and they were allowed in. At that point, there was still a lot of police there, and you could only get into that area if you lived there or you were press. Now, I do have an international press card, but in all honesty, I'm not really one for sensational stuff, so I didn't want to visit there with a press card. But because they had to pick up some stuff, we were like, okay, we would love to go. And this is where you can actually see that you can take some really, really cool shots. For example, this is the boulevard. Well, where's the boulevard? Yeah, totally gone. There's nothing there. And this is just one of the shots. So the total devastation. And what I try to do to make it a little bit more impactful or a little bit more dynamic is actually include some stuff. Like in this case, we included the flag. We actually also, and this is not set up by me, this was literally the way it was. I don't like to change the scene, if you know what I mean. Some photographers will actually put some accessories inside a scene to make it more interesting or give it more emotional value. If that's your thing, do it. It works like a charm. It's not really my thing. So this was already there, the little teddy bear, and I just found it so striking because it literally gives you so much information about what happened. They lost their whole house. The only thing standing is literally the front porch, and then you have that little teddy bear there showing you that there's so much more that you don't see about sadness and, of course, somebody's life that has totally changed. And that just gives me a little bit more attention to detail and a little bit more emotional impact. Same here, I didn't place the flag there, somebody did. Otherwise you just have a vehicle there with a broken taillight. So what's interesting? But because somebody put the flag in there and because I focused on that and let everything in the background get a little bit more fuzzy, you get a little bit more of that storytelling part. And I think as photographers, we freeze unique moments in time that never come back again. When you can do that with a little bit more impact, I think that really, really adds to the atmosphere of a shot, like in this case. And again, I don't like to place stuff somewhere, so this was really there. But if you do, please remember this to make an image more interesting, add some little details. For example, with model photography, give your model a camera to play with or something else, and it really spices up that shot. Okay. Now, sometimes also we find stuff, of course, that isn't really planned. So we were walking through New York, and at one point there was this bomb threat. Actually, let me see, I believe it was in a week. Where were we? In the hotel. It was very close to Times Square, right? Yeah, we were about 1 block away from Times Square. It's a walking distance, very, very short distance. And there was this bomb threat in New York, and the whole Times Square got blocked off. At that point, I couldn't take any pictures. But when we visited again, there was another bomb threat. And this time we walked through the streets and we saw all the police officers coming in. And at that point, you just pick up your camera, keep your distance. You have to make sure that you're safe. But at one point, you feel that it was false alarm and you are pretty safe. And at that point, I walked a little bit closer and I took some shots like this. Again, this is not set up. It was literally the way it was. Now, the nice thing is, a lot of you guys don't have the guts to do this, including me. I'm a very shy person. You wouldn't say that if I'm on a stage or if you see me live, but I'm really a very shy person. Enoweek is a little bit more broad and going like, oh yeah, we'll do that. I'm a little bit more like, no, just stay in the back. The nice thing is, and I learned this through the years, is if you really show interest, and I mean really show interest into the work that people do, and you make And you make very, very clear that you don't take images for Instagram and to be famous or to go viral or whatever, but you make images to bring a message. That's what really works, and they let you take your images. They won't harm you, or they won't say go away. They will actually help you out and go like, hey, do you want to take a picture of us? Yeah, sure. Okay, take the picture. So overall, if you act very nicely, you will get nicely back. So don't worry about it. And you know, a lot of people ask me like, hey Frank, aren't you afraid to ask people to take their photos on the street? What if? Yeah, what if? What is the worst thing that can happen if you ask somebody, can I take your picture? They say no. Oh my, did I die? No, they just said no. That's the worst that can happen. So when you see somebody on the street and you think, this is a really interesting person, walk up to them and just say, hey dude, I really love the way that you look. Can I please take your picture? Now, in most cases, they will say yes. And I will tell you exactly why. And this is in the Netherlands, we have an expression, the coin falls. And it means that at that point, the light bulb goes off and you go like, now I get it. If I walk on the street and somebody comes up to me, hey, can I take your picture? I go like, why? Because I'm tall? Because I'm big? Because I look pretty handsome with my beard? Or whatever. Why do you want to take my picture? And you go like, why? Because I'm a normal person, right? But if every morning I wake up and I put my bone in my ear, I put my big nose ring in, I comb my mohawk, and I check that all my tattoos are clearly shown, I take up this little shirt that clearly says I'm awesome or whatever, I put up my makeup, whatever, I make it really weird, right? And I go on the streets. Do you really think that somebody like that is surprised if you ask them, hey dude, you look awesome, can I take your picture? No. So it really depends on who you ask and in which situation. If somebody is really interesting, they probably know it, and probably you are not the first photographer asking it, right? So don't be afraid, just ask people. And if they say no, whatever, just move on. Sometimes you have to be fast, like for example here. Now this image is a little bit blurry. We walked through the metro in London and I literally saw this. And the first thing, my reaction was like, what? My second reaction was click. This is one of the reasons you always have to carry your camera. Don't have your camera in your backpack, because if you see something interesting, you have to take it out of the backpack and shoot the scene. Don't. Make sure that you always have your camera handy, because without a camera, you can't take any images. Now, another thing that happened to me, and I also had to respond really fast, was actually this shot. Let me scroll up a little bit. Believe it or not, again, not set up. This is Times Square. I was standing there with my camera in my hand looking for people to shoot. I wanted to have great images. And at one point I just turned around and I saw this scene and I was going like, this is so cool. It reminded me of a Mexican standoff in those movies, you know, where somebody pulls a gun on somebody and he says, yeah, I got you. Oh yeah, look behind you. And you see somebody else standing behind the other guy with a gun to his head and he said, yeah, did you really get him or did I get you, baby? And you look further and you go like, yeah, look behind you. And there's another guy with a gun, you know? So I believe it's called a Mexican standoff. In this case, the guy with the iPad was shot by one guy with a phone and one girl with an iPad and one crazy photographer from the Netherlands behind them with a real camera. It's just being at the right place at the right moment. And of course you miss a lot of shots, but sometimes when you have that camera in your hand, you can really, really shoot something interesting. Like for example here. Okay, so one of the things that I'm not a big fan of is shooting, and I actually showed you this image, that's why it triggered my mind. I'm not a big fan of shooting homeless people, and the reason is it's very easy. And I think it's the wrong message to send. You know, there's a lot of misery in this world, and I think we as photographers, if we shoot somebody that's homeless, make sure that you shoot it for the right reasons. And I hear so many people coming up to me with a portfolio with a lot of homeless people in there. And they go like, yeah, just give them $5 and they let me pose and it's awesome because look at how dirty they are. And the only thing I think about that is, dude, seriously, what if you were there? You know that if you give them $5, they will probably buy drugs or alcohol. Just go into a store, give them a sandwich if you really want to give them something. But don't go for the easy way. Now, of course, you can make a statement with your images, and that's something that is important. And let me see if I have some images of that over here. And I actually don't. We recently went to South Africa, and that's actually where we took some images from local people. And I don't have them over here, so I will do that in the next one. But those local people are so incredibly grateful for what they have that actually when you take pictures of them, they are proud. And that's a huge difference between going somewhere for the kicks in your Instagram or really sending a message. And that's what we try to do in South Africa actually. Okay, now one of the other things is of course being fast and always have that camera ready. So when we were in Norway, we actually were parked in an RV park straight to a fjord, and it was absolutely amazing. And at one point, Anna shouted outside, "Frank, come with your camera." I ran outside with camera, not without, with camera, and I saw this beautiful double rainbow. I immediately took the shots, and like that, the rainbow was gone. So if I would have gone out like, okay, what's wrong? Oh, hey, double rainbow, let's get back in, grab the camera. By that time, there wasn't any double rainbow anymore. So as a photographer, especially with street and travel photography, always have that camera next to you. So when we drive in the RV or in the car, I always have that camera next to me. In fact, I like it when other people drive and I can sit next to the driver and shoot through the window, because that gives you so much more options. Like for example, this one. This one we shot in Las Vegas during Photoshop World, and I just love the reflections of the Mandalay Bay. It's an almost golden hotel, and it just reflected the light back beautifully. It's not a really interesting shot, but for me it just gave this beautiful look, and because the window isn't 100% clean, you get these nice bubbles and the reflections. It's just a pretty awesome shot, to be honest, although the scene isn't that interesting. Now, when you are inside a car, you can do a lot more, of course. You can shoot through the window, but you can also ask the driver, like, okay, can you go a little bit slower here, drive a little bit faster? I'm looking to see if I can have some more images like this one. This was in a taxi cab in Dubai. And we drove past this, I think, when we arrived from the airport, and I was going like, I really like this, but this was during daytime. So we just rented a cab for the night and just let them drive that way and just take some images. And the only thing I asked the driver was, can you slow down here? Can you slow down here? And he was just going like, it must be an amateur photographer shooting through the windows, because that will never work. And I actually told him, like, a lot of people tell you shooting through a window of a driving car won't work. The trick is have a very, very high shutter speed and just be stable. And of course, make sure that the windows are clean. But you get some perspectives that you normally never get. It looks like I'm standing on the road here while I'm still safely in a cab, of course. Now, when you are in the back of a cab, that doesn't really work, right? But it can still give you a great image. Okay, now one of the other things that I love to do is just go and explore. And this means that you often end up in situations where you want to recreate something. Now, I'm a big fan of The Walking Dead. So when we visited Atlanta, I of course wanted to get that location shot. And here we go. Now, how did we find this? Very simple, just Google it. And this is one of the ways how you can make your photography during travel a little bit more interesting by giving it a story. Like when I show people this image, they go like, hey Frank, that's a nice night shot. Yeah, nice, I like the trails. And I go like, yep. But did you know that this is actually the scene where The Walking Dead started? And they go like, really? This gives you more to talk about. And let's be honest, if you show people just your images of your vacation, how often do people fall asleep or they aren't really interested? They let you go, but they are not really feeling it, right? This way, you have something to talk about. Okay. Now, of course, as a photographer, I love shooting people, but sometimes you are also a little bit scared, right? You don't want to shoot people if you don't feel comfortable with it. Of course, you can do it from the side of the car, like here. But another thing is you can do it in a subway. Now, most of the time, I will not use my normal camera for this, but a smartphone. And how do you take images like that? Well, watch this one. Let me see, where was it? This image. Do you see the guy? And he probably caught me in my trick. Now the thing is, you all know selfies, right? It's annoying as heck, but we all take them. Now how do you take a selfie? Like this, right? This is the way that you take a selfie. Okay, how do you take a normal picture of somebody? like this, right? Now, if I have some, let's say I want to shoot you, right? You are now watching this screen. I want to shoot you. So I will take this picture. There we go. Now it's very clear that I took a picture of you, right? But how about if I do it like this? Hey Ma, how are you doing? Hey, greetings from the Netherlands. Yeah, hey, fine. Hey, and we come next to me. Yeah, hi Mom. Did you realize that I now took a lot of pictures from you from a lot closer? Probably not. Unless you turn on your strobe, and that's probably what happened here, because he clearly got the idea. I call it the inverse selfie. It's the best way to take pictures of people if you are a little bit shy. Now again, I have a very, very strong moral feeling. I will never take a picture of somebody that looks weird or is handicapped or is homeless. I will not make fun of people. However, I love to shoot people that look normal in a funny way, like this guy. And let's be honest, if he saw this image, he would probably not mind that I took his image. He will probably want a copy, I hope. Okay, so as a people photographer, I also love to shoot portraits. Now, this is all more landscape work, and I'm not a great landscape photographer. I just wanted to show you some stuff. But what if you really went for the portraits? And that's why we actually have another one, and that's actually called street faces. Now, when we go to street faces, you will see that it totally changes. This is where the subject is not the area anymore, or the surrounding area, so the landscape or the building. This is where we actually start literally interacting with local people, or not, depending on what you want. For example, this guy, I just asked, no problem at all. However, this guy, he didn't really want to be on the picture. And he was so much in doubt that at one point I thought it was safer to just tell him, okay, I won't take any pictures. So how did I end up with this picture? Very simple. There's something else that I do, and it's a little bit mean, but as a street photographer, you know, sometimes you get away with it. Now, how do you normally take a picture? You put your camera, and this is, just imagine that this is a professional camera, so with a lens. Normally you put it in front of your face, look through the viewfinder, you press the shutter button, and you take the camera away, right? What a lot of people don't know, or don't realize, is that there's a screen on your camera. And you can set up your camera that if it is in front of your face, the screen goes off, and the viewfinder works. And when it's off your face, the screen actually goes on. So how did I shoot somebody like this? Very simple. I aimed the camera at him, I look, and see this finger? It's going up and down a little bit. So instead of doing this, it's going up a little bit. I just aimed it at him and said, put it in front of my face. Can I take your picture? So I showed him that I didn't take the picture. At that point, he went like, no. Because he had any doubt in his mind, that's why I used this image in my portfolio. If he would have said no, immediately I wouldn't use that image. But he was in doubt. Later on in the hotel, I decided that I really love this expression. I love this guy. I love the stuff in the back. And it was just too great of a shot to not publish. Now, in all honesty, I don't publish this image online. I just have it on my portfolio. So I won't do it in any competitions. I won't include it in any books as a major image, maybe a small image. So I do respect his wishes of not being in a photo. Actually not, you know, but it's just a great image. So this is something, your moral standards are probably different from mine. Some people say, hey Frank, you really can't do this because he didn't give you permission. I go like, he was in doubt and it's a great shot. I wouldn't do it if he looked terrible. So just make your own rules for that. But overall, respect the ones that you shoot, right? But sometimes they just, or most of the times, they just want to pose. Like this in Dubai, those people just loved posing for the shots. Now, there's also something else that I love to do in photography, and that's actually find a little bit of humor. So when I saw this one, a new home from boxes, I saw the guy sleeping here. The first thing I thought was, yeah, that's cool. If you wake up, you fall immediately in your bathroom, right? And you can build new home boxes. And it just was a weird idea, but I just love the shot. So sometimes you have to put a little bit of humor in your images. And often it's also getting to know somebody. And you'll remember probably the story of Clouseau, that Inspector Clouseau, right? The Pink Panther. Now, one of the things that he always did was when he walked away from a scene, he turned around and he said, like Steve Jobs, oh, one more thing. And this is actually where the whole conclusion came. Now, in this case, I tried to shoot lifeguards before, and mostly they are no, they don't want to. Okay, I accept this. Now, this guy, this was around, I believe, the Pacific Coast Highway in the US, in California, and there was this old, run-down VW van standing there, and of course the lifehouse. And the thing I wanted was this shot, so I wanted the lifeguard. So I went up to the lifeguard house, and I saw there was a young guy, and if I'm gonna ask him, he'd probably say no. So I started shooting his car, the VW. And at one point, and the thing looked terrible, trust me, it was just a junker. So the guy came up to me and said, hey, do you like my car? Now, the first thing you have to do, yes, of course, because it's his car, right? So he started talking about the whole renovation process he went through, and with all due respect, if he tried to make it look older and more junk, he succeeded. If he was really restoring it, it was probably more in his mind than in the car itself, although it drove, so maybe he did something, but it looked really terrible. So I started talking to him about his VW van and how much he loved it and what he did to it, and I think after 15 minutes or so I said, hey, what's your name? He said, Topper. I said, okay, hey Topper, nice to meet you. I shook his hand. At that point, that was still the normal way of approaching people. So I shook his hand and said, hey, I'm Frank, I'm from the Netherlands, I'm a photographer. Normally I shoot people, but during trips I still like to shoot people if they're interesting. But I also like to shoot VW cars. I really like them. It's that iconic look, right? And it's not a lie, but that one wasn't nice. And he said, yeah, I also love those fans. Hey, nice to have a fellow VW fan. I was going like, yeah, sure. So at that point, you feel it coming. I turned away, walked towards Enwick, towards the car. He went into his lifeguard house. I turned around and I said, oh, one more thing, Topper. Now I'm here. I normally shoot people. Do you mind? No, I would love to. There you go. So, for people who are afraid to ask other people, can I please take your photograph? Keep a real interest in those people. Talk about the stuff that they love. Because it's way easier to shoot a friend or an acquaintance than somebody that's totally strange to you, right? A total stranger. Don't do that. Get to know somebody. And at that point, you can also ask somebody, hey, can you pose a little bit? Can you do this? Can you do that? So very simple. Now sometimes the shot goes totally wrong, like in this case. I shot it from the side of a car, the car moved a little bit too fast, and trust me, this guy wasn't shot. He was just drunk, probably laying on the floor. And I actually took the shot without thinking about it. I think I wanted to shoot something else, and I saw this one and I just shot it. Now, the image was blurred, and it didn't look nice in color. Now, this is where the joke started. A lot of you guys that visit my seminars or that know me know that I have this joke. If something is totally out of focus, it's moved, it's blurry, it's noisy, it doesn't look right, but it's a strong image, make it black and white, add a lot of noise, add a lot of contrast, instant art. And that's exactly what I did here. If you see the color image, even if you see the black and white, you can see it's out of focus, you can see it's blurred and moved. But by adding a lot of contrast and a lot of detail in noise and vignetting and whatnot more, and just keep pumping up that contrast almost to pure black and white, you get something that is interesting, even if it's not that interesting. So that's an example what you see here. Okay, let's go a little bit further. Another thing that you can realize is that sometimes there are these places that you know for sure are going to give you great shots. Crossways. We call them zebras. Now, you have to wait for a while sometimes, but this is one of the tricks that I actually got from Jay Mizell, and he's of course one of the best street photographers in my opinion that's still alive. But he always told me like, hey Frank, don't be a hunter. I always was a hunter. What I did was I started out with my camera like a little boy, walking around the city, trying to shoot whatever I could. And I was looking hard for those images. I really, really wanted those images. The problem was I came home with maybe 2 or 3 great shots. And I missed probably a gazillion. The thing that he learned me was find the stage and the players will come. It's actually not his advice, it's Robert Desuneau, another great street photographer. And I tried it out for the first time in San Francisco, and I've been doing it ever since. Find a crossway, stand there, blend into the crowd that nobody notices you anymore, and just wait for that moment. Sometimes it will take you 10 minutes, Sometimes it will take you an hour, but trust me, one moment, there will be a great shot. And because this is street faces, let me go very quickly back to the travel portfolio. You can see that I use a lot of those crossings. Because, let's be honest, when somebody walks over a crossing, they are also watching the traffic. So they don't really take notice of a photographer sitting there and taking a picture. Combine it with a 12mm wide angle, sit on the floor, you can get some really, really crazy and funky stuff. As you can see here, sometimes I just crop out the fact that I'm at a crossroad, at a cross zebra. And sometimes I'm very lucky, like in this case, express and you see a pigeon. Like, you don't think of this when you go out and you walk and you take a picture. You don't think about, oh, what if I see somebody from a delivery service and a pigeon together in one shot? You go like, Frank, you're mad. That will never happen. Well, in New York, you never know. And to be totally honest, I actually found out that I shot this when I was back in the hotel. Imagine my response. So I was going through these images, and a week is sitting somewhere else, on the restroom or whatever, or on the bed, and I was going through these images, going like, ooh, I really like this. Ooh, I really like this. And then at one point, I probably screamed like, oh my, look at this one. And then a week was going like, what's going on? And I showed her. She was going like, did you Photoshop that? No. I didn't even realize it when I shot it. So sometimes you're really, really lucky. Don't start complaining that I cut off one of his wings. Don't. Okay, again, zebras and crossways. Really, really cool places. And you're pretty safe on a crossway. In the Netherlands, they can't hit you when you're on a crossway. So that's awesome. You can stand there for hours. No, don't do that. Okay, so find the stage and the players will come. Now, how do you find the stages? We already talked about it. But also the timing is very important. Now, when you travel, it often happens that you don't have a lot of time to go somewhere when the light is right? You have to make the image when you're there, because otherwise you will probably drive your party crazy by, okay, we have to go back and we have to wait 10 hours for the next shot, so we have to stay in this area. No, you have to take it at the moment that you're there. Now, one of the things that I love to do is actually go out with rain. You might wonder, rain? Yes, rain. Watch this. You get so many cool images when it rains because a lot of people, first of all, they behave differently. Look at his face, for example. Look at the umbrella. But also, they don't pay attention to anybody's taking pictures. And again, that helps a lot, especially for me. I'm not very confident when I take pictures on the street of people. But it really helps you because people are so busy with other stuff, they just let you take pictures. And I just love the rain. Now, another thing that I loved is actually being smarter than the system. Hey, I'm Dutch, right? We don't want to spend a lot of money while traveling to take pictures because then we will probably be bankrupt because there's so much that you want to shoot. So how can you get images that you normally have to pay a lot of money for and you are not 100% satisfied for totally free or for $5? In New York, again, we talked to one of the local residents there, a friend of us, and he told me, hey Frank, if you want to shoot the Brooklyn Bridge really close up and you want to have some great shots from the skyline of Manhattan and you want to do it in your own time and you want to do it from the left side and the right side and underneath and whatever you want, do something very, very smart. He said, I'm going to take you with the car to a parking place. And this parking place was all the way at the end of the river. I don't know what the river is called, but forgive me for that. And we actually took the ferry for the people that work in Manhattan. So they park, they pay for the ferry, and the ferry just goes like this, all the way through Manhattan. So it goes back and forth, back and forth. It takes about, I believe, 4 or 5 stops, and then it ends up at the first location again. Now, you are not forced to go off. You can start here and end there, but normally, of course, people go from there to there. So what we did is we paid $5 each, got into the ferry, and after half an hour we were back at our starting location. But the cool thing was, and although it rained like crazy, I got some really cool shots of the bridges. And this is without any doubt one of my favorites. And you see the skyline. Now, again, rain. When you take pictures with normal lighting, it often looks very, very flat. Unless, of course, you have the golden hour, sunset, sunrise, whatnot more. But often, when you just have the sun, it's a little bit boring. Rain changes everything. First of all, it gives you mood. Second of all, it's great, of course, for desaturating your colors, making it a little bit more moody. It tells a story. And of course, you have the big softbox in the sky, so if you have beautiful, soft light quality. And yeah, you get a little bit wet, but nowadays all cameras are pretty much waterproof, so don't worry about it. Okay, and another part is, of course, nowhere to go. This was shot from a place called Dumbo. I don't know the exact, I believe it's down under Brooklyn and Manhattan Bridge or something like that. It's a place that I would have never found by myself, but again, thanks to the local people, you can actually find those spots and take some really, really cool shots. And by the way, if you go there, there's a beautiful ice little cart that's stunning. Okay, finally, when you travel and you are in a plane, you can of course go to sleep or take some images through your window. I actually have one and it's not on my portfolio yet, I believe, or maybe it is. Let me see. I took that with the phone during our last flight. No, it's not here on here yet. I will update this very soon. And what I did is used long exposures during a night trip, and you actually can see the sky and all the stars. It's absolutely stunning. It's a one in a lifetime shot, unless of course you fly every time at night, but for us it's a one in a lifetime shot. So, and don't be afraid. If you think like it's never gonna work, just try it. Trust me, much more will work nowadays with modern cameras than you think. Okay, for now, this is about what I wanted to tell you about street and travel photography. Just some small tips. What we're gonna do is we're gonna do these live streams a little bit more often, because in the Netherlands we entered another lockdown until, I believe, January 19th. And of course we want to keep you guys a little bit entertained, and of course also myself a little bit entertained. So this is one of the live streams about street and travel photography. I can do another one if you want, or we can talk about model photography, do some retouching. Just let me know in the comments below what you would like to see in the live streams. I hope this helped you out a little bit. And by the way, most of these images are just edited on mobile devices, so Lightroom, or just Lightroom on the computer, but there's no Photoshop hardly used. So don't think about, hey, I don't have expensive gear, or I don't know anything about Photoshop, I can't take those images. It's literally maybe a little bit of a bump in contrast and whatnot more. As a closing thought, I would like to tell you guys that images are everywhere. Even if something doesn't look interesting, sometimes you really hit the jackpot, but you have to see it. Like for example here. And again, I don't like shooting homeless people, but when I see something like this, the arrow pointing towards keep clear, I just had to shoot this. So, okay, thank you so very much for watching, guys, and see you again next time. Please subscribe to our channel, leave comments below, and really help us out by telling other people about our channel so we can grow. See you again next time. Bye, guys.